All right. Well, my guest today needs no introduction. Plus, you can see her name on the screen already, but I'm going to give a little introduction. So, for the fifth year running, my guest has created the NextGen Homebuyer report, and it just published here recently. We're going to talk about that today. My guest is also the executive director of a nonprofit focused on bringing financial literacy to communities through the housing finance industry, through ambassadors in the industry. That nonprofit is First Home IQ. Kristin Messerli, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
So I think this is a little bit of a tradition for you and I. This is like the third year running where I've been pestering you to come on and talk live about your next gen report. It is easily like one of my most anticipated industry reports every year. It also happens to, fall into the wheelhouse of all things that we think about here at FinLocker. So we use your report every year as we think about our product and our design. So first of all, thank you from the team at FinLocker, but thank you also from the entire industry for this great work.
Thanks. It definitely started as a passion project. I mean, it's still a passion project, but it's been really fun to see this develop and the use cases for people wanting to better understand the next generation.
I love it. So we're going to I want to get into the report itself. And also we'll touch on, probably more than touch on, but we'll get into the great work at First Home IQ. And then for our audience, I'll make sure in the comments that there's a link to the report. There's a link to First Home IQ and all things Kristin, that if for some reason you've been living under a rock and don't know who Kristin is, we'll make sure you all get to know her through this interview, but also through these links. So let's get right into it. What stood out most in this year's report? And were there any surprises for you?
So I thought it was really, there's actually in the full report, there's a 2-pager. I think it's around like page 5 or 6, where I put the top 10 insights. So it would definitely come from any of those. But for me, what's been really interesting to watch over the last few years has been the declining trust in the industry, declining trust with institutions and with loan officers specifically. And this year it just really plummeted. So I thought that was interesting and creates definitely an opportunity. I also thought the fact that we see so many people that, and I can't remember the statistic, but so many people that are saying now is not a good time to buy, and there's skepticism around the market. It makes total sense that people are feeling more of that now than ever. But it's like skepticism, distrust, and people are, I think it's like 95% of NextGen said that they do want to own homes, but 35% said that they think it's just a dream. So there's this like chasm of people feeling that this is not accessible to them. There's lower confidence. And then as you get into the section of the report looking at how people do research, it wasn't surprising to me to see that YouTube was still number 1 in terms of where they go to for homebuyer education. But, and this isn't surprising, but I think it's interesting to see ChatGPT up here now. That wasn't even on the list a year ago. So just to kind of think about how much has changed. And even for myself, and I know for you, like we use ChatGPT on a regular basis. It's how we function, and so of course, even more so for Gen Z, but they're using ChatGPT as a source of information. I think it was a good percent, like 35% or something like that. So yeah, those were kind of highlights for me.
I want to hit on one thing, but before I do that, for the loan officers that are watching this talk today, this is a report that is must read. Like, you as a loan officer, if you have any desire to be in this business for any extended period, you need to understand this next gen home buyer. And this report is like I said, one of the best, most timely views of what these home buyers are thinking about us as an industry. But I want to poke into the trust issue, because that to me, that was the headline for me. Reading the whole thing, that was like, that's what stood out. And it was really interesting for you to say what you said just a little bit ago, that it's actually an opportunity, because it's easy to look at this lack of trust, this distrust factor, and say it's a bad thing. But I think you and I are aligned. It's actually really a great opportunity for loan officers that lean in the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I think it was 2021 when we first saw some distrust. We were asking, more questions around that. And we saw that 2 in 3 NextGen home buyers said that they didn't think lenders were trustworthy or reliable, which was really surprising. But as we drilled in, we saw that trust has been declining across all industries. I mean, you look at media, healthcare, technology. I mean, that's a part of our reality in our society. And also, I think millennials and Gen Z don't really understand, and often don't have the connection to loan officers. They see, or the industry, they feel that it's a sales process that they need to be skeptical of. And this year we saw, jumped up to 4 in 5 saying that they don't trust loan officers to help them make smart decisions about their mortgage. And so that in one respect is like, wow, we're losing trust. What do we do? But then for that loan officer that leverages tools like FinLocker and First Home IQ and leads with education and provides confidence and empowerment to the consumer, that means they stand out. They're the one in the crowd that is like, oh, if you have this, then you understand this consumer, then you are not only getting their business, but you're getting a lot of loyalty from that.
So I think we should, to set the stage for the audience around the cohort, of people that you're interviewing. In the 2024 cohort, it was 1,000 home buyers, right?
Yeah, each year we've surveyed 1,000 home buyers for the annual report. We've done some additional reports in there, like psychology of money or financial literacy, and done some additional surveys. But yeah, each year we do 1,000 that's equally distributed between male and female, and reflects the market in terms of race and things like that. So,
and I think combining all those different studies, it's like over 7,000 people have been surveyed over the 5-year period. So it's,
yeah.
If you're watching, guys, this is statistically relevant data. And what's cool is we now have a 5-year history of this process, this survey, these questions, and so you're able to see year over year what's going on. Okay, so let's pivot from kind of setting the stage, so to speak, and let's get into that early journey, if you will. And so you talked about the Gen Zs and millennials. What differences did you see come out of the data and how these groups think about getting ready to buy a home? Or are there differences within these groups?
Yeah, one difference was that we saw Gen Z were looking more towards financial advisors, which I thought was really interesting. That there's a big gap there where, and I think this actually reflects the distrust, where Gen Z is seeing financial advisors as looking at the whole picture, like a more holistic approach of, this person's going to know my whole financial picture and they're going to be able to provide advice. So that leads to, how do you set yourself up as someone who can look at the whole picture, provide, empowering advice, and understand what it means to build wealth, or help the consumer understand what it means to build wealth through homeownership. So there's that. And then there's also, and obviously like a need to partner with financial advisors. We do see a gap in how many Gen Zers use social media to go to for homebuyer education. I think it was like 40% of Gen Z go to social media versus 30% of millennials. And then there's some other, ChatGPT was more likely used. Oh, another really interesting one was around affordable strategies to achieve homeownership. And we saw Gen Z were significantly more likely to say co-buying would be a strategy they would use to get into homeownership faster. So I think that creates a lot of interesting conversation around, what does that mean? How can we, leverage startups that are providing that kind of support? And so those are some of the areas. There were a lot of areas that Gen Z differed from millennials, not so much around YouTube and some of these other areas, but but there was not any difference between older millennials and younger millennials, because we always divide older, younger, and then Gen Z. And I think that's kind of interesting to see that the big age range, it's really the Gen Z, like much younger, age, that's going to make the difference there.
And I know there was one of the stats that I saw that I kind of highlighted was that in that Gen Z cohort, only 43% of the respondents felt confident in their own personal finances. I think that's really fascinating, especially in this cohort, because these are people that bought homes, right? And
so in this, these are not people that have bought homes. It's
okay.
Mostly people that have not bought homes, actually.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
That makes sense then. That makes a little more sense to me.
Yeah, it does make sense, but it is important for us to recognize, like, of course, this younger cohort is going to feel more skeptical, not just in terms of trust, but also understanding of their own finances. And we would probably get into this, but the lack of financial literacy education, I think, is interesting to see that doesn't change. Like, millennials and Gen Z are still highly undereducated when it comes to financial literacy in school.
So this is like talk about putting the ball on the tee and letting you knock it out of the park. So for our loan officers that are watching, what would you recommend? What are some of the things you recommend local loan officers should be doing to help change, in particular, this stat around Gen Z's feeling confident about their personal finances? Forget for a moment the home ownership aspect of everything, but I kind of feel like if I'm a loan officer and I can just hone in on helping some subset of Gen Zs in my community, physical or digital, feel more confident financially, then I'm probably solving for what we opened up the discussion with, which was this lack of trust.
Yeah, exactly. So just to also reiterate the lack of education piece, one of the data points we had was that 50% said that they did not have any education in school about financial literacy at all. An additional 30% said that they had a short lesson, or it was optional and they didn't take it. So, I mean, there's a huge gap in any kind of education. So of course people are feeling, they've been offered or taken student loan debt, credit cards, all these things, and they're like figuring out there's all these terms, and they're skeptical about every area of their finances, and they don't have that education. So if you can go out into the community, I think in a few different areas, or at least the way we've set this up with First Home IQ, which our focus is on bringing financial literacy and homebuyer education to Gen Z. We're looking at partnering with schools. I mean, that's just an easy, if you have any amount of passion or connection there, that's an easy area that you can even just show up at a job fair. I know you heard that at a ambassador call yesterday, but teaching a class at a local college, or having some kind of connection there. We've also seen a lot of success with doing a webinar for past clients of your database. So hosting a webinar or a webinar series and really focusing on basic financial literacy, you can get into homeownership conversations and do all of that. But that's going to be more so for the people that are ready to buy homes, or there's like real estate clubs at colleges and things like that are going to have interest there. But just to get people understanding, oh, you're a trusted person. I have more confidence in my own financial, literacy and habits and things like that. You're never going to get all the way to a home ownership conversation if you don't start with those basics. So I love the idea of hosting a regular webinar series on the basics of money management, of credit, your credit score, what that means, debt management, going through those core money milestones is what we call them, all the way through homeownership. And you can advertise that to your database. You can advertise that with your local community, influencers and groups like that. But those are the areas I would say start with. And then of course, post those on YouTube and share those on social media where we know that people are active.
So I love that, by the way. All those things it's almost like these are old school tactics. If you want to go back like 15, 20, 30 years, but they're they still work. They're still effective. And part of the reason they're, I think, highly impactful today is because fewer people do it. This is like truly an area where a loan officer can show out and show up differently than their competitors.
Mm-hmm. One other thing I would say, I was just remembering some of our ambassadors doing this of partnering with local bars or groups that already have events. Yeah, it is totally old school, like showing up in your
Yeah.
community. But you can also then take content from that and post it on social media, and you're getting exponential audience from that. But if you are just hosting a home buyer seminar, you're not going to get people to show up there. People feel so skeptical of their own knowledge. They're skeptical of you. So there's this big, gap there. But if you're showing up before a trivia,
Yeah.
thing, local bar, or you're showing up at an organization that already has the trust, then you're going to be so much more likely to be able to win their trust. So,
And you're not selling. These are people that are so far away from being ready to transact. You're not selling anything, right? So there's like all the barriers can get kind of brought down in that respect.
Yeah, and I just was just at the Modern Mortgage Summit where I was talking to a lot of top performers, top loan officers who would say, like, it's no question that you need to have a pipeline that's a whole lot longer cycle than we used to have. And I think those who are in this for the long haul, who are really going to be a top performer, you have to start earlier and just have the process in place. I mean, you're also going to get people who are maybe not ready to buy right now, but they have a sibling or a friend who is ready to buy. But also you're in their sphere. Even a friend of mine just used a realtor that she'd been following on Instagram for years, because she saw some webinar that realtor was doing. And so it's just that understanding that it's going to take some time is really key, which again goes to your product as well.
Well, I'm sure you've seen the JD Power 2024 Mortgage Origination Satisfaction Survey. Similar to your report, there's like always one nugget that you just kind of latch onto. And what JD Power, what they found was when a home buyer from their cohort, when that home buyer engaged their lender / loan officer closer to the point of thought than the point of sale, and that's important. Point of thought is that early journey, up funnel, months, maybe longer in the process than point of sale is typically when, in my mind, I'm being, as a loan officer, somebody's introduced to me through a realtor. They've already got house contract ready to go, and now it's like high anxiety, right? Mm-hmm. But when that home buyer that JD surveyed, when they were involved early in the process with their lender, they were 20% less likely to shop at all, and 54% less likely to multi-app, apply with another lender throughout the process. So just those two metrics alone tell you that conversion is exponentially higher the earlier you get involved with a home buyer in their process.
That's amazing. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Kristin, I want to get into First Home IQ. I'm a huge fan, as you know. We're partnered up there, so that's all awesome. And I love the monthly ambassador calls. I learn so much on those calls from not only you and the team at First Home IQ, but the ambassadors who are, everyone's got their own little secret sauce in their community that works. Mm-hmm. Can you give the audience, like, what's the backstory? How the heck did this thing come together?
Yeah. So early backstory is that I started my career as a social worker, and I did a lot of financial literacy education, even though that was completely not supposed to be part of my job. It was just, you realize there's this huge gap I worked a lot with homeless youth and immigrant communities. And so that's where my passion started. And of course, I did a lot of work with through my company, Cultural Outreach, where I worked with lenders and reaching young and diverse markets. So this has been a long time of me feeling like how can we create a solution that would truly bring people together in the industry that are passionate about this and want to that have that like-minded focus of how do we better reach and serve the next generation. And then, of course, I teamed up with Dave Savage many years ago, like I think a decade ago, where we were both similarly passionate about this, and then we looped in Todd Bookspan. This was about a little over a year ago, where it was just kind of the right time for us all to say, like, hey, let's do something. Let's bring together our communities and in this industry really solve for this together as an industry. And so we started this, just I guess it was 2 years ago, but it's really been a full year of running through our ambassador program. And the ambassador program brings together loan officers and real estate agents to empower them to be those education leaders in their communities. And then we as an organization partner with schools and nonprofits to bring our curriculum and lesson plans and all of that into those communities. So the ambassador program makes that possible. And then we're also doing that all together. But it's been really fun to be able to partner with people like you and the passionate leaders in this industry that are like, yes, let's figure out how we can do this and make this really solve for the financial literacy crisis.
Yeah, what's so cool to me about this is the tip of the spear for you guys is the loan officer and or the agent. That's that local housing professional in the community. They're the glue to this thing because they're the ones that are delivering the content. Now, for those that aren't aware, the content that you guys are creating and have created is so good. I mean, it is like A plus content. And so as I put my loan officer hat back on, it's a dusty old hat from a number of years ago, but as I put it back on, I could only imagine like how powerful I could have been if I was armed with this type of content and kind of empowered, if you will, to deliver it into the community with no expectation of transacting, right? It's a different mindset. But now if we go back to, 10 minutes ago, when we were talking about, creating content, doing webinars. I mean, imagine going into a school and doing a 20-minute talk on financial literacy and just teasing out this journey towards homeownership and having it recorded.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden you take that 20 minutes worth of content and you can repurpose that as a loan officer for your day job, right? Your loan officering job to demonstrate to your community that, you're someone that can be trusted because you're part of this education solution. The whole mission is so aligned across all those players.
Yeah, I think it's cool that in this case, the doing good does do. I think someone said this yesterday that the doing good does help you do good in your business too. So it is a big opportunity where if you are leading with education and you're doing this kind of mission first work, whether it be a webinar or social media posts or doing outreach in a school, those are all going to lead to business opportunities and trust building, which is so key, as we know from the NextGen Homebuyer research. But yeah, it's interesting. When we started, we just put together curriculum. Like it was just about, we have a library of presentation materials and now there's supporting, worksheets and guides and stuff. But we wanted to make it as easy as possible for you to go out and do a presentation or do some kind of education, both for schools and for industry professionals. But we've grown into a lot of other strategies as we've had ambassadors say, hey, I want to partner with real estate agents. Hey, I want to post on social media. I want to do some email outreach. And, so we've built a lot of these strategies and with the goal of just making it as easy as possible for you to lead with education.
Love it.
Yeah.
So this will be a self-serving question, but I do think that especially with modern home buyers, technology definitely plays a role in a differentiator. So you've seen, FinLocker in action. We've got our First Home IQ app in the App Store that all of our ambassadors have access to. How do tools like the First Home IQ app, i.e. FinLocker, how do those help build trust and financial confidence from the ground up?
Yeah, I was actually about to say, and that leads to this. So this is something that I was so so excited about because I mean, actually, personal finance apps came up as one of the top
Yeah.
sources people go to for information and trusted resources because ultimately the consumer wants to feel empowered. They want to be able to see what personalized information means for them, and so you can't just do a presentation and expect the consumer to say, "Oh, I got it. This is what this means for me." But doing a presentation and then being like pulled into, here's what, budgeting, here's what my credit score, here's what these different things that you're talking about mean for me. That makes that creates a truly holistic and captivating education process for the consumer. And then, of course, for the person presenting, the loan officer, they're now connected with that consumer and it provides that trust building. I mean, it is truly I think the best way to be able to deliver education and build trust is by delivering that with the education tool.
Love that. Yeah, I talk a lot about, the education, the content is critical, A1 critical. The technology, in this case, the First Home IQ app, kind of brings it to life, right? So it's like I can learn about it, but now how does it look like in real life based on my personal situation, which is super cool.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
all right, let's shift gears. We're getting towards the end here. You're almost home. Uh, so going back to the NextGen Homebuyer report, this time around, I think in each of the years you've done a good job of this, but you highlight the gaps across race and gender. So what's your take on how mortgage loan officers can do better in reaching these communities to kind of, bridge that gap?
I think one is that we need to understand that there is a real trust gap in these communities, and partnering with those who already have the trust in those communities is going to be really crucial. Even for me, when I was a social worker working with primarily the Latino immigrant community, it was really important as an outsider for me to come in and partner with people who are already trusted. So just understanding that there was we saw a lot in the Black respondents specifically, where there's a big gap, of course, in home ownership and then access to information from friends and family. Well, if there's already this huge gap in home ownership, they're not going to have as many friends and family that are going to be able to pass on not only wealth, but also education. And then there's the distrust factor. So it just becomes really crucial that you are actively building out strategies to reach these populations. And I do a lot of presentations on reaching women specifically, and understanding some of the women tend to have lower confidence in their own knowledge of personal finance, regardless of their actual education or financial literacy levels. And so it goes to the point around how are you empowering them with that personalized information, not just saying, "Hey, I'm the expert, you should trust me." It's with all of these populations actually, but it's really important that you are cultivating a collaborative experience, and that's where the app is so crucial. And delivering things that are scenario based, so that you can say, "Hey, let's look at," even showing examples and things like that can be really helpful. But yeah, I thought I would highly, highly recommend everyone read the spotlight section, demographic spotlight of the report. There's also some really interesting data around that, and even the ways that people access information differently.
So guys, if you're still watching, we got a couple more questions, but if you're still watching, drop in the comments next gen, and then we'll attach the report for you to grab right from this comment. All right. Okay, I got two closing questions for you, Kristin. So if a brand new loan officer came to you and said, "I want to be the go-to financial educator in my community," what's the first thing you tell them to do?
Gosh, okay. So if they're a brand new loan officer, then I
Yeah.
would say partnering with individuals who are it all comes down to partnerships to me. I think, the more that you can partner with real estate agents, financial advisors doing presentations and webinars together. That's going to partnered again with the like local community centers or influencers. Influencers meaning could be social media, could be a someone that's connected in a local entrepreneurship community or something like that. But I think that is going to be a way that you show up, you develop that kind of authentic connection with people, and then you can build out your lead funnel and using the app and using we have a lead form with the First Home IQ quiz. There's things like that that can help you stay connected beyond that and then build your database from there. But that's where I would say to start. But I will say it's different for everyone. Like there's some people, like you mentioned, seeing the different how ambassadors deploy this differently. Some people are want to be really connected in their local community college or a university, and they've built out some incredible relationships through that. And that's their go-to strategy, So I would say, first looking at where you feel comfortable, what you're passionate about, and just leading with that kind of how you're delivering education through a collaborative approach, like using an app and going from there.
I love that answer. And so if someone came to me and they were just started the loan officering business,
Mm-hmm.
the first thing I would say is become an ambassador of First Home IQ, because you're going to now have access to the best content available to any loan officer, right? Especially someone that's new to the role.
Yeah, thank you. That is everything that we've developed with First Home IQ will make you the education first leader that you want to be. So as I'm describing this, we have built out strategies with templates and all the materials you need. So absolutely, that would be the easiest thing to do.
So we're obviously going to encourage everybody that's watching to read the full report. I think before we hit record, I asked your permission, and now I'm going to get it on tape. But I'm taking content that you produced in the report, and it's part of a talk that I'm going to be giving over the next several months in Florida and Nashville, up here in Michigan, to loan officers. And so to me, that's one of the beauties of being in the community, in the First Home IQ community, and frankly, having a relationship with you as well, Kristin, is access to this unbelievable information. And I'm not going out and saying, "Oh, this is my, my thoughts on things." It's like, no, this is part of a study where over 5 years, 7,000 people have been interviewed through this survey process. This is what people are saying and thinking about you, loan officers. So I don't know where I was going with that, but I
say based off of that, because I'm so glad you're sharing what you're doing. This is what is really fun about the report is free to anybody. I mean, you can now take that as leadership, go into groups of real estate agents or offices or wherever, and share that leadership. And that's why we have the slides built out for you. You can just take whatever slides you want to share and throw those in your deck. That's all, or use the whole thing. And yeah, that's exactly what this is built to do, is to bring leadership around this. We want you to share that message and share that data. If you are, and then again, use that 2-page top 10 insights. If you're going physically in person, print those 2 pages out, and that's a great handout for you. And I think and you can add your information at the bottom if you want to. That's just an easy thing to do. If you're part of the ambassador community, we are also creating kits for you to be able to leverage these resources in going into real estate agent offices or partner groups, and continuing to build out resources around that too.
Love it. Okay, last question. So what is one insight from this year's report, that you want every loan officer and lender to truly take to heart?
Well, I started with the trust one, and that's the one that I think is just it permeates everything I think about when we look at this. I would say we talked about 80% of people not having the financial literacy education they need in high school, but it all comes down to the distrust. I think that is what is how can you stand out? How can you build a relationship with the next generation? It's all going to come down to how you build trust. Love
it. It's funny that we opened up talking about that being kind of the highlight, the headline, but it is truly, as I think about that report, as I think about what we talked about, the JD Power satisfaction survey. So you take these two things together, those are pretty powerful data points that are telling a not so great a story about our industry and about us as professionals. But going all the way back to your opening statement, that's the opportunity that every loan officer has, is to show up better than your competition. And let's be real, the bar is pretty low in this case.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think it's a huge opportunity, and even just kind of understanding some of this data and leading with education, that's how you can build that trust and stand out in your community. So.
Love it. Kristin, as always, thank you for the great work going into this report every year. I can't wait for, not to fast forward through 2025, but I can't wait for next year's report. Thank you for the wonderful work that you guys do at First Home IQ. And then just thanks for being a friend to the industry. Appreciate you.
Me too. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share and collaborate as usual. So
Right on. See y'all.
Bye.